back to the Integrate Intelligent podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Brickler. Today we have Scott Brickler again, founder and CEO of CADTALK. And we have a new special guest, Nick Knight. Nick Knight is of ASWi. So welcome, Scott and Nick. Great to have you both here.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Nick, if you give a few minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know that you and I have known each other for several years now. So tell us a little bit about kind of your origin story, right? What's the Iron Man story of Nick Knight?
Well, no real Iron Man story, but
you know Tony Stark stuff out there? Okay.
Yeah, well. It's I would say started in I would say the work side of things in high school in a machine shop, and that's where I fell in love and was really introduced into manufacturing. Worked from a work side of things, worked there for several years just in a shop, and then also went back to work there as an accountant after I graduated school, and was a part of an ERP implementation. Fell in love with more of the process change management aspect of systems, and saw that a system could help businesses, and then ended up going to work for an ERP company and worked there for 15 years. While doing that, traveled around, was fortunate to travel the world. It's where how I met my wife too, is just being able to travel, and met her in Phoenix, and then 6 months later she moved to Texas, and so just started I would say that side of things on the personal side with just the adventure in life, and fast forward now with 4 kids and just living on a farm, and appreciate the farm to table movement and aspect, and trying to live every day like an adventure, and just say pour Jesus into our kids and in our life, and live in a missional way. So that aspect also poured over into the work side of things. So towards the end of my tenure at my old job, felt the Lord placed it on my heart that I needed to move on and change chapters in life, and that's where we started ASWi as well. So got together with some other folks and started selling Acumatica, and not knowing anything about an ERP channel, and only really knowing about manufacturing and ERP, and that was it. And so I think the naivety really helped, because I had no idea what I was getting into.
I hear that a lot. I think we've talked to several ERP specialists, and I'm beginning to see this origin story, this superhero story, if we're going to go down this metaphor. It's like every person was like, yeah, I was working at a company and we got a new ERP, and then I got put on this project. I mean, it's like Scott too. It's the same story over and over. I was in this manufacturing company, or I was in this company, and we got a new ERP, and then they just put me on this project, and all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was the guy or whatever, and then that leads into it's like
it sure does give you a lot of exposure to the underbelly of a business, right? And just from just the change management aspect is what I see as the hardest lift of putting in an ERP successfully, because you're never going to do everything the right way from the system standpoint. You could always do more. You could always do it differently. It's just a matter of how much can your team adapt to at that time, and what do you know at that time, right? So if you fast forward post implementation, you're like, well, we should do this, we should do that. It's coulda, woulda, shoulda. So just look at it as a growth opportunity. We talk a lot about crawl, walk, run. So when we started selling Acumatica, it was 1st of March 2020. And so we thought we were off on this amazing adventure and this journey now, and this system that's, it's on the surface, what we knew about it was going to be really big. And then COVID hit. And so we had a 2-week honeymoon with no website, and all of a sudden we're not supposed to go anywhere. And we're not supposed to go into an office, and I couldn't go visit anyone because we're not supposed to travel at this point. So
Mm-hmm.
I deemed ASWi an essential business and seconded the motion. So I was like, well, we're going to be essential and we're going to figure out how to make this thing work. And
sounds like it was
so
pretty essential that you did that, right? I mean, you didn't have time to sit
had
around
to.
and go, well, maybe I should do this, or
I was
maybe I
like,
should.
well, yeah, family dependent on you, man. Your
That's
your
pretty
work's
essential.
critical.
That's a pretty essential business. Yeah.
Pretty essential. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the I'd say a little short story, and then also just background, and then how we started ASWi. It was really the Lord placed it on my heart to go, and so we decided to finally stop fighting that battle and just look at ASWi as an opportunity to be missional, and our core values are love, serve, and care, and just try to help people elevate their ceiling. All right, so leverage Acumatica, leverage software as a tool to help people grow their business, improve their business, hopefully raise their ceiling, and and just really look at say ERP or Acumatica or whatever software, cybersecurity software, as just a way to leverage a tool to help people run their business and
Right.
operate it.
I'm seeing a pattern here. I talked to a couple of folks. Well, I'll talk to Scott, but also a couple of other folks with an ERP. I'm sure we'll talk to many more. I wonder if this kind of the origin story will pan out, but also like the ERP being kind of the backbone or sometimes the plumbing of an organization. To your point, seems like those things. It's like always you said constant improvement. You can always get better. I could have done it better. I could do this. It almost mirrors like human growth. What I mean by that is like we as adults, right? We're trying to grow and get better skills, be better people. Be whatever it is. Be less angry. Be more even keeled. Be better with our wife or kids or our coworkers, or achieve the next level in the business or whatever that is. It seems like the projects you work on. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Do you see that in organizations? You work with a lot of companies. The company's ability to be successful with an ERP is in part maybe their ability to grow, right? To grow as
change, right?
The change,
so,
yeah. Well, growth is change, right? The growth is the change, right?
Yeah, and we also, at the end of the day, especially like I said, I was talking about earlier, the underbelly of a business. You're really impacting the culture, right? If you have a big change management initiative, ERP or moving office, or any big change management initiative, you're going to impact and test the culture of your company, and that's what I've seen. And sometimes that's too much for one person to take on by themselves and then do their regular job, or a group of people to take on, and they've been doing same business, same way, same processes for 10, 15, 20, or 30, 40 years, and it's like, man, it doesn't compute, right?
Right.
It's not that they can't do it. It's more of there's some type of fear, or there's just, you chalk it up to change, and that's where you go back to when you're rolling anything out. Is I think it's accept that it's going to take you longer than you want. It's going to be harder than you want, and most likely more expensive than you want. And that's what I learned about starting ASWi.
Right.
It's harder than I ever thought. It's taken a lot longer to get to where we are right now than I thought it would. And it's harder than any one person can really do.
Right.
You really need a team, and you just need to take small incremental wins. Take small incremental wins. You look at that in life, look at growth. I'm glad that we have kids. I'm glad that I didn't have to start parenting a teenager without having any warm up, right? I think
yeah.
I wouldn't have, I would not have been very successful, in that endeavor. So, some people are gifted to jump in and take whatever aspect of culture or life stage that someone's at, and then plug in and go. I think when you're looking at impacting the plumbing of a business, you take incremental wins, right? And then you look back and you're like, oh yeah, look where we were, where we are. We are improving, right? Inventory is better, or things, we can close the month in 4 hours instead of 4 days, or 4 hours instead of 20 days, whatever you may look at from just incremental process. Growth takes time. People
It
a lot of it
does.
talk about bodybuilding or weightlifting, and you don't lift max weight, same
Right.
weight every day, right? So
Right.
we talk crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
One of my coworkers talks crawl, walk, run, fly. Just take incremental wins, and you can see the culture of the business start to change too, right?
Yeah.
In a lot more of a healthy way.
It's interesting. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, I like this. This is maybe just my own pet project, but I like this idea of the ERP implementation or the change management. It's kind of a metaphor for me. I mean, I'll always be philosophical. It's kind of a metaphor for life. Maybe this is too deep for this podcast, but kind of metaphor for life, because it represents, it represents the life in a lot of ways, just in a condensed period, right? Because you're like, okay, I got to make this change. I'm going to make this change. And you see that with people in their lives, right? That can be like kids, different stages in their lives, right? That change, they're becoming new people, whether that's from babies to adolescents to teenagers to college, right? And at each stage, I have a son going into middle school, and he's going through a change right now, and it's been really challenging. But he's becoming a new person. And you said the culture, his culture, which we would determine as personality, is changing. But you see it like with you'll see it with your kids, and then students as well. Graduate from high school, right? You come to university. You have this. It's hard again, right? This change is really hard. Do you notice that anybody, like, what kind of people or organizations have the best outcome is the wrong word, because I'm not, but like who respond best to those change? What kind of people? What kind of organizations? What?
Yeah. So, Scott, were you going to say something a while ago? Sorry.
I was just going to kind of second the motion about the crawl, walk, run. And we talk about this as well, about people looking at implementations as being a big bang versus as opposed to being an iterative approach, right? So it's like they try to do everything at once in some of these things. They think same thing with any kind of change that Jeff was mentioning. Like you're trying to do everything as a big project, as opposed to let's start walking, get something in place, then iterate, try to start crawling, then walking, and then running. That type of kind of iterative approach seems to work better, because that's like I think it's just kind of human nature to try to get everything in the first pass. To do everything as a big bang. And like at least our experience has been, if people do an incremental approach, then it tends to work better than the big bang, which is kind of the same similar vein what you're talking about, the crawl, walk, run. And that's and then to go back to what Jeff was saying, that's true probably in life as well. It's like some things just can't be done in a weekend.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah, we live on a farm. I can tell you, I'll never finish my projects, but if I can get one small win, there's growth, right? And so, Jeff, to answer your question, I think, say if you wanted to rank folks that will implement, I'd say the best is accepting that change is hard, and change is not, it's not one quick flip of a switch. It's incremental. I used to pray when I was like, okay, how are we going to even keep a company going when we don't even have a website, right? And the Lord would tell me, patience, perseverance, and diligence. And those three words just rang true, I would say, over the last 5 years. So that's where and going back into live, starting a business, same thing as you're basically restarting in a lot of ways when you're implementing an ERP system, right? Or you're going to roll out go from a 2D CAD system to a modeling software. It's a big change. So you're kind of starting over, crawl, walk, run. I think the folks that will implement the best understand that method. Mm-hmm. One infographic that I saw a guy present, and he got it from, I think it was like the Australian Institute of Technology, and we use it a lot today, even with clients, is 5 key elements of change management. It goes back into, this is not ERP centric, it's just change management in whole. And that's the vision, the skills, the resources, the incentives, and an action plan. So folks that have a singular vision and everyone can get behind is your say your North Star, right? So what's the vision? Don't overwhelm folks with saying, well, we're gonna tackle and accomplish every single one of our challenge points as a business. Just pick a couple. Allow people the time to implement, which means you have to have someone help do their regular job while certain folks can focus on implementing whatever the new software or tool you're using. You have to train them. You have to improve their skill set a lot of the times, and sometimes that's just more professional development versus go click somebody how to train somebody how to click some buttons. Right? It's the ERP side isn't just really clicking buttons. It's knowing when and what to do, and where to do it. And that's more just, let's say, business education and process education than it is system education. And then the incentives, we talked about with them or what's in it for me. So people will normally achieve a goal if they understand that they have some personal investment in the thing. So I've seen businesses that will incentivize the implementation team, you give them bonuses or extra vacation. Outside of, well, your job's going to be easier. Well, that's not necessarily true. All right. So one guy might have to do more work in order to help another guy down the road. So, the
one guy might get 30 minutes of extra work and to save 30 hours downstream.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think that's important for people to accept. And you should probably, budget something for your team because you're asking them to do more work. Right. And
right.
It doesn't matter if it's just an extra couple of days off, but you're asking people to put in 2 to 4 to 8 hours extra work a week for the next 6 months. It adds up, and that's where it goes back into things are harder, they're longer, more expensive than you want them to be. Right, the soft costs, and then have some type of action plan. Doesn't matter what tool you're using for the plan, if it's Excel or OneNote or something, but have some type of iterative or waterfall plan that people can support. Right, it doesn't matter. Again, pros and cons are on both, but just have something that you can follow. That's what we. So if folks get behind that, then I think that doesn't matter how big of a company it is, it helps.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And if you've ever done it before, right, that always helps if you've gone through it before. If you haven't done it before, then I say just lower your expectations for deliverables and results, right? Lower the expectations so you can get a win. Your team really needs a win, right?
Right.
So,
absolutely. Yeah, I think that I really like that the idea of the kind of making something in it for them. I don't think I've ever heard that, and I've been in a lot of ERP implementations.
Yeah, I've never heard that either.
That's actually a really cool concept of because like I think I mentioned when we got on the call, we're actually implementing some new software internally here at CADTALK, and then it kind of gave me that idea of it's true. They have to do their normal job. There's there's nobody whose job it is to implement software. So we had that and I've been kind of helping the team do it as as an initiative, but at the same time, it's that the wheels have to keep turning. You have to get customers going. You have to do all these types of things. And how do you set that up to where it's something? I mean, people, it's pretty amazing. People are excited about it because they know it's going to help. It could help, but it's not.
Could help.
But that isn't necessarily enough, which is just a great way to think about it. I mean, what's some of the more creative things you've seen people do in implementations of over the years of projects? I mean, I've been involved in some ERP projects as well as obviously CADTALK ones, but it's it just seems like there's people that approach these things in really kind of creative ways. I'd love to hear some stories about that.
One of the things you giving people credit, right, and then market the credit to some local communities, or you see people that they'll do a press release on it, right, and then specifically, this is our team. Team outside of monetary incentives. I mean, gigantic celebrations, vacation.
Recognition is always good, right?
You've seen people get promoted through it. You've also seen people not make it through an implementation because they get in the way, right? And you get both sides of it. And but I think from more the positive aspect, it's extra vacation, see trips. People have been paid. The company would pay for somebody to go on a weekend or whatever, a week away as part of the vacation incentive outside of just cash. Um, if you're asking people to spend their personal time, then really the time is the thing that you can give back to them when they're all said and done. That's one. I think that's a pretty low cost is from the amount of just stress that the person's gone through. It's good to let them charge their batteries as well. You get a more productive employee when you come back after you ask them to go through something that's massive change.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's just like I think people. It's a very common thing that with companies think that like, well, we'll just kind of do this. We'll do this alongside the other thing that we're already doing, and and they don't. And they get fatigued, and it's like I think it's why a lot of projects kind of fail or can fail because they don't plan that into the project. It's like all those like hidden costs or hidden like not necessarily financial costs, but just hidden costs of the team, things like that, are all aspects of these implementations that people lose out on. And it's like so you kind of got to go into it with an open mind about like thinking, oh yeah, this is the true cost of this is actually maybe this plus some number, not not the cost of the software, or the cost of the services, or that kind of thing. It's actually a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's your big cost. I mean, your people are your big cost, so you want to make sure that you set them up to be successful.
What led you to? I know. Were you an Acumatica user before, and then you started that, or like are you? What got you Acumatica, by the way? Yeah.
Like I mentioned, I was working for another discrete manufacturing ERP company, and I was there for 15 years, and came home after being gone for 3 weeks and in Southeast Asia, and kind of recognized that this was that was time to stop living out of a suitcase.
Time for a change.
Well, I didn't want to change, honestly. Like I was comfortable. I was super comfortable, but I was waking up at 2 a.m. thinking I was going to have a heart attack. And and I'm 3 kids. Three young kids, and my wife was pregnant with our 4th, and I'm going, I can't be gone 200 days a year and pretend and say that my identity is not in my work when ultimately it is. And that was the wake up call. The Lord was like, look, man, you want to trust me? I got you. And so I called a friend of mine that I used to go to church with, and he's the one that said, hey, you should check out Acumatica. It's I think it's something you could really do well with. And so we started checking it out and started praying about it and prayed a lot about it. And, he asked me the question, and gave me the advice. He said, I'm going to ask you a question. If the answer is no, don't do this. I said, all right. He goes, do you believe in yourself that you have the ability to do it? And, he said, don't. And he's a Christian too. So it's not like I'm going to idolize myself, but he's like, do you think that you have the courage to step out in faith and just see something like this through, and you ask yourself, you think you're going to do this, or are you going to just go ask other people your whole life to, give you work and give you employment? And I'm like, you know what? I do. He's like, all right, well, then you'll be fine. You'll be fine. He goes, it'll be hard for a couple of years, right? I can endure this for a couple of years, right? Yeah. Well, a couple of years is
a couple of years longer.
Couple of years is different, and different math for different.
Like you said, right? It's going to be longer, harder, and more expensive. It's on you, right? Starting ASWi, harder. It's always harder, right?
It's hard. It's hard, but. The good thing, the benefit that I didn't realize with Acumatica is I'd say, the Acumatica promotes it's an easy to use user interface and system to learn, right? And I did not fully understand that and was not really aware, but I think that's something that has been a blessing for us because we can go into a lot of different markets outside of manufacturing with Acumatica and do well, and work with the product. So it helps us whenever you have a product that's current current technology. It's a good user interface. It helps with the user experience. It helps with that change management aspect when you can show someone something, but because the system looks like, say, the smartphone today with apps, it helps with the learning curve. So it takes some of that weight off of having to answer a question. Well, why is it doing this? So you still have it, but not near as much.
Were you able to? So when you started the business, I mean, this is all so familiar to me after being an entrepreneur as well. So it's like I remember some of these stories and the traveling too. I mean, I remember the traveling. I used to do, I think, 40 plus weeks a year. It sounds like you might have me beat on that one. Mm-hmm. And I think
it's the same, right? It's just being gone is being gone, and it's hard.
Being gone is being gone. It's tough. I mean, I always tell people, like, side note, people ask me like how glamour it is to travel, and I say, go watch. There's a great movie called George Clooney. It's called Up in the Air, and I'd say watch that movie, and that'll be exactly what it's. That is exactly what it's like.
My brother asked me, he's like, "Did you see that movie?" He's like, "Reminded me of you." I said, "Why do I want to watch a movie about me?" I'm not watching that movie.
It's really good. It shows you like how you optimize for like all the little conveniences. Trying to get the easy rental car and like getting in the line between and how all the little inconveniences just stack up and just drive you crazy, right. And then you're trying to get like more points in the airline. It's great. It's a really good example of it. But I just tell people to watch that, and then they'll get an experience of what that's like. And
that's a little taste. There's a little taste.
Yeah, there's a little taste.
I just ask, it's like, do you like sleeping at home, right? And that's something that I had forgotten. I forgot what it was really. I really liked it, but I was not sleeping at home more than I was sleeping away, and that's when it just said, you know what, somebody else can do it. I'm sure somebody else will sign up for it, and they'll do well at it, and that's good. Mm-hmm. It's time for me to not do that anymore and do something different and not be stressed out for work. There's plenty of work stress that's going to come, and my hope is that when we have stress that comes into our workplace, that we're able to achieve and overcome those stressors, help the client, help our internal clients, our coworkers, but then have different stress. So if we have different stressors, then I know we're growing. But if we have the same problem over and over and over again, I know that something's broken and we need to really dig in and fix it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm okay with stress. I think if you come in as an owner or partner, that you're gonna have it, right? You're gonna have stress in life in general. It's just how do you handle it? I go back to what's your core belief system, because that's how it's going to emanate. And then hopefully it's different stress over time and not the same stress.
Right. Yeah, the graduating to better problems, trying to get to higher quality problems. I think wishing the problems away doesn't work. You just hope to get to better problems to work with tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Higher quality problems. That's awesome. Yeah, I love that story, because it's like it's just so familiar and like, hopefully that like sounds like at least with COVID I think COVID probably would have cut the travel down quite a bit. That's probably
it was awesome.
Yeah, it was like a great time.
I saw my wife more in 2020 than I had in the past prior 5 years. It was
a magical time. People don't realize, like, I thought it was a magical time that like to be with your family, because I didn't travel a lot at that time, but I had traveled before, and I was thinking, wow, like just the amount of just a great example of like how something that everybody thinks is horrible could actually be quite magical if you enter the right context.
I really, a lot of social disparity around the topic, right? For us, I got to be at home, and that was a huge blessing. I got to be around my kids. Like I said, at that time, my wife was pregnant, so it was able to fully be able to help with the new baby and then the other three. And I was thankful for the time not to travel, right? And there's plenty of seats on airplanes, and plenty of people can take those seats. If I don't have to every week, then I'm okay with it, right? It's just a different life stage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It sounds like like I said, it's very familiar. So when you were talking about that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Well, that was, it's interesting, and that was one of our selling points. I mean, we had nobody to sell to. We had to figure that part out, but because Acumatica is not only a cloud-based but true browser-based environment, there's plenty of people that don't have access because they can't go to the office. And it's like, well, we had some great conversations, and we're able to win some business because of just Acumatica being a browser-based system, and you didn't have to use RDP or try to figure out how to do all of the back end IT work. It was already done for you. So that was a benefit that we saw and have continued, just to continue to market that strength of the system. And current architecture, it sure does help.
Absolutely. I think, you don't have to, somebody has to have a VPN in or do remote desktop to get into a server somewhere. And like the cloud-based infrastructure and the browser-based just does so much. It's like, I think COVID really kind of opened that up about the idea that you could actually implement enterprise software without actually going there and really doing that. I mean, CADTALK is always, we almost always have done remote installations, like that, remote implementations, but we're not an ERP, right? So it's like, it's not, but it became more commonplace. I mean, our partners, like companies like ASWi were starting to do it that way. And it was just like, wow, this actually could work. It's
the manufacturers really wanted you on site, right? That was kind of just the standard. They really, and that was, so that's kind of signed up for, right? I originally signed up for it. And I was like, well, this is the industry we're in. This is what I know. So I'm just going to, part of the job. And then, that script got flipped. And so now it's, for us, we still go on site, but it's minimal compared to doing virtual. You go on site, it's more strategic versus just part of your everyday tactics.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember like when I used to travel, it was because we were I worked for a CAM software or nesting software we used to do. So we had to work on the machines, right? And then you're always kind of seeing the machines run off. But then later we did more integration, and then you're like, all you're doing is whiteboarding and talking about things anyway. Yeah. I think the only thing about on-site that I like, just a side note that I think it's helpful, we're seeing this since like post-COVID as well, is that it focuses you on the work. So there's nothing like being there. And
you got to pay attention, right?
Yeah,
like if somebody hops on their phone in a Teams meeting versus a virtual meeting versus in person, you can get a little different response from the communication. So like, if I see somebody on the phone, I'm like, well, do I need to text you right now? Like, are you just what happened, right? And if you're in person, man, you can knock it out. No whiteboarding session, just a human interaction. Human interaction is still extremely important. Right?
It is, yeah.
I can second that. We have a project going on now, non-traditional project. Again, still with the capabilities of integration, what we can do, but this particular customer had, they're not using part numbers. They basically have like a CAD configurator, and there's no secret to ERP integrations. You got to have a number. Like it's pretty simple. You got to have an identifier. I always use this. The analogy is like, here's a big dictionary. Look up the word I'm thinking about, right? So you have to have that number, and then this
the words would be in that dictionary, Jeff. So it's
yeah, it might be a different language, right?
It might be a different language. That's right. Different language.
So I went there on site because we were over the Teams calls. Over the calls, I think both sides were struggling to come up with a solution because it was hard. How are we going to solve this thing? Because understanding what they're doing and all of that, and then so I was like, well, hard problem, and we weren't making the progress we needed. So I went out there for I was there for 2 days on site, and I knew the problem. I walked in and I said, okay, this is what I think, and we had a solution and tested and verified that was the way to go before I left, and I said, and then project's back on track. Project's on track because now the fundamental thing that you have to have, which is that number, we had that figured out, and a method.
You don't always know if light bulb's going off, right? Light bulb, definitely, those light bulb moments are best played out in person, for sure.
You also projects, right? You're also, it's not just solving a technical problem. There's the people aspect. They have to believe that your solution may be right, and you may be. If I'm over here and you can't see me, or even on the call, and I know Nick, you and I have met in person several times when we have a good relationship. But my point being is that if you don't know me from the next guy, and here I am talking, I'm pitching a solution, how much trust do you have? You can't read me. When I'm there on site, one, you show the commitment. Two, they can look you up and down and get a feel for you, and then you're showing, look, I want this to work, and you we would whiteboard there, and we went through some things and we tested them right there, and they're like, yeah. And after I left there, was a complete turnaround in terms of their demeanor and their confidence and the
Well, you go
solution.
back to what are you really impacting, right? You're really
Mm-hmm.
impacting the culture, which is the people. And if you're pretty linear, you guys are one dimensional on my screen, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
it.
pretty linear. It's still going to be a pretty linear conversation. Um, and that's just, it goes back to culture. It's a big emotional psychological exercise to go through a change management software
One
process.
one of the things I had been thinking about from a leadership standpoint is, like, as Scott mentioned, we don't go on site. We haven't gone on site, but I noticed that it might be something that we should consider. To your point, Nick, it's strategic. Maybe it only happens once or twice in the whole project, depending on the size of the project. Some projects are too small for that to happen, right? Because it's very clear cut. But for some larger projects where there could be advantages to being on site.
I know there would. I just think of some stuff that we're doing together right now, and some projects we're working on in tandem. You having both parties on site, you're going to be able to create more solutions than what's being talked about, because you're going to observe some stuff.
Yep.
And that's pretty important to be able to see, right, and experience, and be able to provide. And kind of ask. We started our relationship because of the Acumatica and CADTALK framework, right? But what else can you do, right? Or what other problems can you solve other than what's just the single bulleted item that's currently being talked about? And Acumatica can solve a lot of problems. You got to know about them, and then you can figure out how to build the frame, use the framework, and then build the solution. I think of all the different, Scott, your background, nesting, and just take off the type of machine, the type of environment, what other machines are coupled with your nesting or your laser. It's how people shaking parts. So, like, that stuff matters, right? And if you don't see it, nobody brings it up, then you don't know about it, right? And you can't necessarily build the best solution possible. But you start with that open mind. You start with being able to talk with folks, go on site. What are the crawl phase objectives?
Absolutely.
You go on site, you can validate the scope, or do you need to change your scope? And then using systems and technology that's current really helps, right? And again, you don't have that uphill battle, the technological battle that you have to overcome with every single client.
I think about the times I've been on site. And I've been at CADTALK. I'm in my 10th year. After I always mentioned that I was a teacher before, and I left my career and changed careers. In the 10 years, this is my 10th year. I'm starting just like the first quarter of my 10th year here, and I've been on site just a handful of times, maybe half a dozen times. But every project where I was ever on site, that project was way stronger, just much stronger. And I was only there a couple of times. The first customer I sold CADTALK for the first time a year into the business. I remember driving to the customer site from Cincinnati. It was outside of Milwaukee, about an hour. My wife and I drove with our newborn son. Actually, wasn't newborn once. It was maybe 4. I don't remember. It was our young son. And I was visiting this customer. I remember like, I'm going to visit this customer. And I sat down with them and talked to him, and I was so fresh. I still was learning, and I talked to him, and I worked on CADTALK, and I got it configured, and they bought, and then I implemented them. That customer's been on their CADTALK for 9 years, 9 years now, and it's just like they're still using it to this day, and they've expanded it, and they own it, and I own it. They take ownership of it, and it's like I was only there for and a half, 2 days. And it's like, I just think about, like, a customer in the UK, right, that went live this year. Like, I have a great relationship with them, and I have a great relationship with a consultant there in the UK. I just think the relationships that you build, I don't know. I'm really just stuck on this idea because I've been thinking about it for a while, and it really, I think there's something we're missing there in terms of strategic value. It's not just the software, the product that we're offering, but that relationship, that knowledge, that helping those customers.
Transaction. right? Software is going to be transactional, but if you really want to add the substance to, it goes back to, well, what's your vision, what's your mission to work with clients, companies, customers, what's the purpose, right?
One of
What's
our
your purpose?
values, is outstanding outcomes, right? And if we want outstanding outcomes, we may need to consider that, right? Now, I'm not saying we're going to be there on site.
Get a motorhome, man. Just get a motorhome and go,
That's it.
right?
Right, but right, exactly.
You're a teacher. You can teach your kids while driving, right?
All those projects in Europe, all those projects in Italy, I'll take those.
That's right. Outstanding outcomes for the select, fill in the blank.
That's right. What city are you in? Have I been there? What's good there? You got people.
That's what everybody thinks you're doing when you're traveling too. It's like you're like, oh, you're gonna go to Europe and you're gonna do this, and I was ended up in a cornfield in Iowa somewhere.
Yeah,
that's where I was at. That's where they put manufacturing companies.
Well, I went to the UK.
That's you need to adjust your marketing strategy, right? So you need to market certain areas.
Yeah,
I went to the UK for a customer client, and it wasn't a cornfield in Iowa, but was it cornfield in the UK? It was not corn, but it was it was grazing pasture. And in the UK, I was like, where am I? I'm just in a random place in England,
When you walk in the building, what you realize is it's similar problems. Yes. People have the same similar problems, but a lot of the times you just need to be able to connect with the client on the problem, so you can work with them, right? So
yeah, absolutely,
that's important too.
No, this is good. I mean, it helps. It does help to drill down and help me, kind of confirm some of my thinking, which is we're adding more than just simply the software. Yeah, we have a solution. Yeah, it's effective.
The hope, man. Yeah, that's the hope. You got to really be able to connect with somebody. You have to be able to take care of their problem, right?
Yeah,
like I said, otherwise, software is going to be transactional. So how are you helping to take care of their problems?
That's it.
That's when it becomes personal.
It does. Yeah, so I want to make sure we're running out of time. I think I don't want to get too long in here, but tell us a little bit. I want to highlight Acumatica here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, what kind of companies do you work with at Acumatica? Can you maybe give some examples of companies you helped, what they look like, and where do you see Acumatica going, and what keeps you excited about that landscape?
So the areas of I'd say a focus for ASWi started in discrete manufacturing focus. That was just because of my background. We still focus on discrete manufacturers, but we also work with some process manufacturing clients, defense contracting, just because of the requirements, not only within the ERP, but the overall package need that a defense contractor has, namely because of the new cybersecurity requirements. We've been able to couple Acumatica ERP with some other solutions to allow a defense contractor to stay compliant. Firearms, which that was really I would say a first micro vertical we went after, was to work with some firearms companies and built some integration to some FFL bound book compliance software that, again, just trying to help someone with their business. And how do you eliminate duplicate data entry, construction, and more on the I would say industrial construction versus something like residential home building construction, but
it's like project-based manufacturing where they're doing
project-based manufacturing. But it's or project-based fabrication. And on the surface you're like, well, you're making something, so that would equate to manufacturing, but it doesn't. It first and foremost, that the client is going to be more project focused, and if they have any type of retainage needs or specific billing needs, then they could really fall into the construction realm, and then they have maybe a manufacturing or a fabrication component, but to their business. So those are the main ones that we really are looking at. So discrete manufacturing, process manufacturing, construction, firearm, whether you're a manufacturer or you're a retailer. Acumatica has multiple solutions to satisfy construction, manufacturer, retail, commerce needs. And so we've been fortunate enough to have a diverse portfolio of clients that can fit into multiple industries.
What's coming down? What are the new developments in Acumatica that excites you the most?
I would say first, it's not the functionality for me. I love the fact that Acumatica has a platform that can stay current and that we can integrate with anything. Open architecture, we can integrate with anything. We can extend the product and it stays core, it stays stable. We can create a total package solution for the client's needs that's not just your traditional ERP. So that's what's most exciting for me. And it's current. It's staying current. New technology. You see AI is a huge thing. Well, AI is already coming into Acumatica. It's not something that the engineers have to rewrite the back end in order to accommodate. That's there. Right? That's what's the most exciting to me. Just the ability to go fast. Like the software world changing every day. Acumatica is keeping up.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's good. Well, Nick, I really appreciate this conversation. You and I always seem to connect, half a dozen times a year at events or just, sometimes just in text. So I really appreciate you being on here. So if, what would you like kind of wrap up to say? Where do people find you? If manufacturing companies looking at, Acumatica, how do they find you? What's your website? Sure. All of that, where do they get hold of Nick Knight?
So first, thank you. And it's really a pleasure and an honor. I value our friendship and our relationship. It started around work, but it's very much more than that today. I'd say our website's ASWius.com. LinkedIn profile under Nick Knight. So I would say those are the two easiest ways to get a hold of me. I mentioned earlier I live on a farm, and I don't spend a lot of time on social media. So
sure.
Really just I'd say go to our website, info@ASWi. You can get a hold of us. So my email is Nick K, so NICK @ASWius.com. So
very good.
Best way to get a hold of us.
Well, Nick, thanks for taking that time. And Scott, again, good to be here with you. I really enjoy these discussions about change management and of course I'm philosophical sometimes, but so I appreciate your patience there. But this was a great conversation, Nick. Man, you have a great rest of the week, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye.